Hey folks, um, just making a video for the topic of the week, posted by Vince, and the topic this week was tournaments, and various questions about tournaments that we need to think about and answer to. And what I like to see in a tournament are varieties of armies. Right, if you go to a tournament and it's just like three or four different types, they're all like the main power armies. That's not quite as interesting. I like seeing a variety, the whole wide spectrum of armies, and I think that that's really cool to see. Each one is kind of its own different play style, and I like to see lots of great tables, beautiful terrain, and one of the great things about going to tournaments is the fact that painted armies are usually pretty standard. I have a lot of painting to do, but I think that's one of the great things about a lot of tournaments is the mandatoriness of the painting. And all of us have those crazy stories about painting like the night before till 4 in the morning, and you get to the tournament and you're half asleep, and it's just kind of part of the experience, which is kind of fun. So as for the tournament rules and things like that, I like to see missions and scenarios that are a bit different, maybe unique to the tournament. I've been to a few tournaments in which that they post brand new missions and scenarios, and it really adds a particular dynamic to it, where even someone that's a really competitive player really needs to maybe change how they play in order to beat your opponent. And I think that demonstrates the qualities necessary in order to win, the ability to change and adapt. And to that regard, anything that really encourages people to think differently or do different things or to play in a different manner in some ways, I think is a positive thing at tournaments. Bigger tournaments can feel more kind of epic. I've been to a few big ones, but they can also just feel really overwhelming. You only play, 3 or 4 people at most. It's kind of a very small sample. And, there's advantages and disadvantages to that. Smaller tournaments are a bit more personal, and I guess I'd probably go for them more. I don't know how large the tournament scene is today in terms of numbers, but that would be kind of my preference, like a smaller, more personal one. You get to play maybe the people you already know, or the armies you're already somewhat familiar with. The advantage of the bigger tournament is that you do face people with beautiful armies that are different, and maybe they play differently and they look different, and there's definitely a lot of advantages about that, and so on and so forth. The amount of games you can fit in, it really is just dependent on the time. I mean, I think for a competitive player, more games the better, because you can always get, if you only play 3 or 4 games, you get those horrible matchups that will, guarantee you a loss. It's like a epic game of rock, paper, scissors or something. But in it can also be really time consuming. I think we've all been there. If you've been to a tournament, sometimes you get to like turn 2, between like moving the army and getting the army set up, and depends on the type of person you're playing against, the type of person you are. If you're maybe not that fast, or more casual with how you're deploying, and the types of armies you're deploying, right? If you're deploying a very concentrated elite force as opposed to a huge mob, I mean, sometimes it takes a while. And I've been to a number of tournaments where you just get to like maybe turn 3 and you have to call it. And that's really kind of disappointing. Not that great of an experience. So I want as many games as you can fit in, but not so much that it really is a problem for timing. I would say I used to go to more tournaments. I mean, well, that's definitely the case. I haven't been to one in several years now. I guess I just was more of a competitive player than I used to be. My emphasis now, I would honestly say, is more collecting. I do play, but it's very casual, and that doesn't mean I don't want to play more, and I might get into a competitive scene maybe in the next couple of years, but for me, I'm a very long-term gamer in that regard. So I'm going to talk about 2 stories at tournaments, which were kind of funny. There's lots of like little stories. I think every time you're at a tournament, you could come up with something that was kind of interesting or fun to talk about. The only tournament I actually won, first prize for, not painting or sportsmanship or something like that, but like actually won the top prize for winning the competitive tournament, if you can call it that. There was a tournament on campus, and I went. It was probably like 8 or 9 players, and it was really quite silly. The final battle, I think my first opponent was pretty new, didn't really, new to the game, so that was kind of an easy win. But the final battle, there's 3 of us, and the tournament organizer put us in a giant, we were all against each other in like a giant rumble, like a free-for-all, which was like, it's got to be like the worst idea. So if you're organizing a tournament, don't plan for something like that unless you really want a very casual tournament, because it kind of makes everyone a little bit angry. And it ended up being, really kind of ridiculous and silly, because the other 2 got into like a personal, like little fight about paint schemes and things like this. So they kind of went at each other, and I just sat back and moved in on the last turn and captured the objective and won. So don't do that. The other tournament that will always stick in my mind was the Grand Tournament, the Games Workshop Grand Tournament in 2001. I think it may have been my first tournament I ever attended. I flew down to Baltimore. First army I ever painted, really horrible when you think back on it. There's 120 40K players, and I think 116 fantasy players. And that was a lot of fun. We were in this huge conference hall, and just looking around and seeing that many games being played was just insane. And I was like a power gamer at that point. I'm definitely not now, but at the time that was my goal, was to concentrate in as many characters as I can, because it was 3rd edition 40K. Heavy concentration on characters in the rules. And I had 2 high marshals, and I was against a Tyranid player, and there were a few new Tyranid units I hadn't played against, because Tyranid Codex came out a few months before then. And I charged in with my 2 high marshals. I was playing Black Templar, and the high marshal was like their lord characters. And I charged into these stupid little bases that Tyranids have. Lots of attacks. They're like the swarm bases in fantasy. And and they both died, and that was really humiliating. And at the end of the tournament, they hand out the regular awards, best painted, overall winner, but they also hand out a lot of prizes that are just there for a laugh. And I got a prize because it was ridiculous that these 2 uber characters got taken down by these little pathetic creatures. But that was kind of an interesting learning experience too, because 120 players, and this is how much of a power gamer I was. I think I won 2 of the 3 games, and the 3rd one was a tie. So I did good strategically, but composition score, I went over to the board halfway through the tournament to see where you are in the comp score. And, painting I was in the lower 3rd quarter. For a new painted army as a relatively new player, that's totally understandable. But comp, I was dead last out of 120. It's just well, suffice it to say, I'm a far more casual kind of player now, and I don't try to kind of gung-ho everything I can into an army. It's just not kind of what I want to do. And part of that was because of that experience. So thanks for watching. Have a good one.